All right, Wednesday, March 11th. There's a lot of stuff I want to go over today, so let me get to it. First of all, the coronavirus situation. It is really starting to cascade now. I mean, we are seeing an explosion of events, venues, all kinds of things being canceled. Schools, school athletic programs, NCAA, like parades. They're canceling the St. Patrick's Day parade here in New York City. Like everything is a cascade now. It was happening little by little. Each day we'd hear something, but now it's an explosion. So this is real. This is getting real, and it's getting a little scary. Meanwhile, the White House, the Congress, they're dilly-dallying. But this stuff is cascading now, closures. So this is real. Now, you know that for weeks I've been saying, hey, look, I don't see anything in the data right now. I'm not denying. I know a lot of you are saying, Mike, it's going to come. It's going to come. I got friends in Italy. They're saying, you don't know what's going on here. It's all shut down. All shut down. And I didn't deny that. I'm just saying, look, it's not like even I didn't see it in the data. The trend of the data was getting better over weeks and weeks. But now I'm starting to see in the Treasury data some sign. For example, I've been talking to you about unemployment benefits. They've been in a rising trend year over year. Now, that we have not seen. So you got to go back to the great financial crash, 9-10 years ago to see that. Since 2010, basically, unemployment benefits have been falling year over year, and that's understandable because, people have been getting jobs, unemployment rate's been coming down, right? But this year, starting in, around mid-January, picking up in February, that trend has been rising, and it flipped positive, not by much, but it was positive year over year. But yesterday, again, we made a new year over year high in unemployment benefits. I was waiting for that to happen, and it happened. So the trend is pretty clearly up now. That's a sign. The other thing that I see is corporation taxes, okay, which peaked out in mid-February. That's the year-over-year increase in corporation taxes. They peaked out in mid-February, and now they're starting to come back down. The inference from that is what? Weaker corporate profits. And of course, it makes sense against the backdrop of the situation of what's going on. Companies shutting down, sending workers home, virtual labor, commuting, this sort of stuff. So we're starting to see it. I'm starting to see it. But again, I could point to something. For example, today was the EIA Weekly Petroleum Status Report. All right? Now, if you looked at that report without the backdrop of the whole coronavirus thing going on and the Saudi-Russian price war, that was a really bullish report. There was one thing in that report that I could point to which could be a sign of weakening external demand, and that was exports. Crude exports dropped sharply. Not product exports, crude exports. But when you look at, and crude inventories built up, it was actually a pretty sizable build of 7.7 million barrels. But we had a very big draw in gasoline. We had a huge draw in distillate. In fact, it was the biggest draw in 16 years, down 6.4 million barrels. The biggest draw in what's distillate? Think diesel fuel, think trucking, think commerce, right? Big increase in gasoline demand, gasoline demand at the highest level in 6 months. And by the way, that gasoline demand trend has been going up all through February and now into March. Distillate demand, very strong. So if you just looked at that without the benefit of knowing what was going on, with the virus and everything else, you'd say, well, look, obviously if the economy was slowing down or collapsing, you'd see major contractions in demand. You'd see inventories piling up. You didn't see that. You didn't see that. But, as I mentioned, a big drop in crude exports, so that might be a sign right there of we're seeing weakening external demand. So you have that going on. Stock market hit the so-called bear market, 20% down. Now, I don't pay a lot of attention to that because anybody who sells 20% down, usually I say that's a crazy thing to do. But if we are going into a recession, and by the way, if things continue the way they're going, with everybody shutting down, with the entire global economy shutting down, or at least a good percentage of it, then we'll see way more than 20% down on the stock market. Right now, however, it does seem to me like things are getting incredibly extreme in terms of emotion. I think that if the White House and Congress come up with a stimulus plan, a fiscal stimulus plan, you're going to get a big, big bounce, and then we have to assess the how effective that stimulus would be. But a lot of things going on right now. One final thing, and this is an MMT concept. There was, Trump was talking about cutting the payroll tax to zero, which is a fantastic idea. Typical Trump thinking something like that. And everyone said, no, you can't do that, McConnell, everybody. No, you can't do that because they're saying it's gonna punch a huge hole in the entitlement budget, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. Let me explain how this stuff works, all right? Because this is false. This argument, which is put out there either, ignorantly or with an ulterior motive, like, politically, we don't want to, we can't cut that stuff. All right, we can't cut those taxes for whatever reason. It's wrong. Let me explain. Those taxes, withholding taxes that are collected, in your pay, FICA, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, they all go into the Treasury General Account. That is the account from which all federal spending comes from. So that money, which is ostensibly collected and set aside for Social Security and those other programs, is not set aside. It goes into the regular Treasury fund and it's used for current spending. So it's basically, it comes in, they're telling you, yeah, it's for Social Security and Medicare. No, it's spent right out again on everything that the government spends. On military, on Social Security, on Medicare, on Medicaid, on everything. And what the so-called trust fund gets is basically an IOU from the Treasury. And then, when the Treasury has to make a Social Security payment, it sends out a check to somebody, to a recipient, or it credits their bank account, and guess what? The IOU is then satisfied. It's not like there's a pile of money sitting in a box somewhere that, Treasury goes and takes it and spends it on Social Security. No, that's not how it works. So it doesn't, punch a hole if he cuts the payroll taxes to zero. The spending occurs the same way. There's nothing in that Social Security trust fund other than a bunch of IOUs, which is like one part of the government telling another part, yeah, we'll pay it, don't worry about it. It's a bookkeeping entry. That's it. So just thought I'd educate you on that. All right, everybody. See you tomorrow. Stay safe. Bye-bye.